Hey folks, welcome back to the Frontier Western Heritage Channel. I'm Todd Kestner here outside of Tucson, Arizona, and today we're going to take a look at the knockdown power of the 1851 Navy Colt. So if you've been with the channel for a while, you would maybe remember I did this with the 1860 Army. It's been a couple of years and I never got back around to do a knockdown power on the 1851 Navy Colt, and just kind of wanted to see how this compares. Hey, before we start the shooting test, I thought I'd bring you back here to the Kestner Presidential Library and take a look at some of these Colts side by side so you have an opportunity to see sort of the progression on where Colt got started and then up to the 1851 Navy. Well, as many of you know, the Colt story starts with the Paterson, patented in 1836. I unfortunately don't have one to show you, but I can throw pictures up on the screen. There were several variations of the Paterson pistol, all the way from a very tiny 28 caliber all the way up to a 36 caliber. The 36 caliber became known as the Paterson belt model, and don't let belt model and holster model confuse you, because the belt model is a model you would have primarily in a holster, but on your person, hanging off your belt. A holster model could mean that, but it also could mean it was hanging off of a saddle horn in a pommel holster. So holster pistol sometimes means a larger pistol that would go in a holster on your horse and not on your person. So to distinguish between the two, a lot of times you'd call it a belt pistol. That's what Colt would call it, as a belt pistol, is for being on your person. So the Paterson was there to be on your person. The largest was 36 caliber, relatively underpowered, very delicate, broke a lot, and as many of you know, Colt went broke. So after the bankruptcy, Colt was off doing other things until he was contacted by Samuel Walker and the whole Walker story, which I've gone through with other videos as well. So this particular example is a third generation Colt, and many folks think of the third generation Colts as basically Uberti, and that's, I guess that's relatively true. They use a lot of Uberti parts. Most of the parts are Uberti parts, but put a lot better finish on it. And as you can see on this, I don't know if I can get you to see that color case hardening. It's absolutely gorgeous, and your average Uberti does not look like that. Very, very beautiful color case hardening on the Walker. But the Walker's basically a 6-shot rifle. It held up to 60 grains of powder, could shoot round ball or conical. As one of those videos I did a year or two ago, can be accurate up to 100 yards as far as a combat, and farther probably as a combat weapon, but very difficult to carry around. Very heavy, and there was a problem with the cylinders bursting, and we've gone through that with the Walker videos as well. So Colt's answer to really a gigantic pistol in the Walker was his Dragoons, and the Dragoon model, very similar, is on the same frame, although the cylinder has been cut back about 1/2 inch. The barrel's moved back to meet the cylinder, and we've got a 7.5 inch barrel instead of a 9-inch barrel. This one will hold 40 or more grains of black powder. Obviously will also shoot ball or conical bullet as well. And you can see this is a second generation Colt. Colors are really pretty. They're just not as vibrant as that third generation Walker for whatever reason. They're a little duller. But I do like the grip on it. It's got the darker, more of a natural walnut style grip, where the third generation Walker has got this Uberti red, and not nearly as authentic as more of a brown color. You don't see too many, there are a few, but you don't see too many of these red grips on the guns in the history books anyway. So now we've got a Dragoon that's a little bit shorter, cylinder's a little shorter, comes in a little bit lighter as far as weight goes, but it is not really the answer for a person who wants to carry a firearm on their person for personal protection. However, it's very, very powerful, that is for sure. To answer that civilian calling for a carryable gun, Colt came out with what's become known as the Baby Dragoon. Now this is an 1849 pocket, but the Baby Dragoon was basically the same thing. It was about the same size. It just had a few slight variations to it. If you can see this, you can see that the cylinder stops here are the more modern rectangular dished out cylinder stop. When you're looking at a Baby Dragoon, you are looking at the round or oval cylinder stop. See if I can get that to focus, that the pin goes down into. And so you've got a much rounder and not a guide to it. It's just a round oval-shaped cylinder stop. Whereas the Baby Dragoon would have exactly the same thing, and the 1849 pocket went to this regular, more of a modern rectangular type of cylinder stop. Baby Dragoons seldom had, until the very end, had loading levers, but about the same size and same idea, 31 caliber, 5-shot. So much like this 1849 pocket. When you put it out on the market, they started selling like hotcakes. They put 15,000 of them out before they went to the 49 pocket. So that Baby Dragoon outsold the Walkers and the Dragoons within 18 months of production. Up next was this 1849 pocket coming out in 1850 along with the 1851 Navy. And the 49 pocket was the best-selling percussion revolver, and it was manufactured clear up until 1873. So a long, long time of manufacture, and it did fit that need of anybody who wants to carry a concealed firearm. You could get this 1849 pocket with a 6-shot cylinder as well as a 5-shot cylinder, both of them 31 caliber. So this leads us to the 1851 Navy. And it appears, according to R.L. Wilson, that Sam Colt actually was the one that marketed and labeled the Navy pistol as a marketing tool. He had the Army pistol. This came out in 1850, the same time as the 49 pocket, or right around the same time. And he labeled it the Navy pistol because he had marketed the 44 caliber to the Army and thought that it might be smart to market the smaller caliber to the Navy, so he had a new audience that may be interested in buying this gun. Now this is another 3rd generation Colt. You can see the color case harding on it, and it's got the signature down the back strap. And this is a 2nd generation, and a little more Colty than the 3rd generation Colts as far as the parts and how they were made, but you can also see the beautiful case coloring. For some reason, my 2nd generation here has this Uberti red grip, and I really liked more traditional, historically correct color grip, although there were a few out there that kind of were approaching that Uberti red. But I like this grip better, so this is the one that we're using for the test. The 1851 Navy was marketed as a belt pistol, so it was made to carry on your person, and it's a very handy, well-balanced gun to carry on your person. So it was definitely marketed to the Navy and to the military, but also to the civilian population. Colt's patent was ready to expire in 1849, and he was able to petition the patent office with the case that he hadn't made much profit. And they agreed that he had been out of business for a good part of that time, and so they did extend his patent on revolving cylinder handguns, or just revolving cylinder firearms in general, to 1857. That was a tremendous advantage for Colt because he was able to market his revolving cylinder firearms all the way up to 1857 without any competition, establishing him as the premier repeating firearm of that era. About 215,000 1851 Navies were produced, and in comparison, about 325,000 1849 pockets were produced, and that's just counting the number within the United States, not the London market. Even though Colt put the Navy label on this belt model, most were sold to the Army, and in 1855 there's an order of 1,000, and in the years to come there'd be thousands more that were supplied to the United States Army. Obviously the power of the 1851 Navy is no match for the 44 Dragoons, but it was so carryable that it was actually picked up and very popular with the United States Cavalry. In 1858, a colonel by the name of R.B. Marcy wrote in his book 30 Years of Army Life on the Border, talks about running into a grizzly. And Colonel Marcy was mounted, had a single-shot muzzleloading rifle, and tried to put the bear down. It was relatively close, and they wanted it for meat for the camp, or just could have been for sport for that matter. However, his horse was getting a little bit wound up over being close to this grizzly, and when he fired the rifle, the horse had moved and he just couldn't get a solid aim, and he missed. Since the grizzly was very spooked, Colonel Marcy decided he couldn't really take time to reload, so he decided he's going to try to herd this grizzly toward approaching troops. And it worked. And when the troops approached, many of them had 1851 Navies, and they pulled out their pistols, and they had a few paces distance, shot this grizzly 10 or 12 times. And it seemed to have no effect whatsoever. But then an Army officer rode up who was carrying a Dragoon, and it doesn't say if it's on his person or on his horse, but more than likely it's on his horse. He rides up with his Dragoon, fires 2 rounds, kills the grizzly. So the men pick up this dead grizzly, take it back to camp and skin it. And what they discover, according to Colonel Marcy, is that every one of those round balls or conicals, we don't know which, from the 1850 Navy went no more than about an inch into the flesh of the grizzly bear, not reaching any of the vitals and barely getting through the fat layer. However, the 44 Dragoon was able to penetrate all the way to the vitals and killed the grizzly with 2 shots. Colonel Marcy wrote, and I quote him, "This test was to my mind a decisive one as to the relative efficiency of the 2 arms for frontier service, and I resolved thenceforth to carry the larger size." So this experience definitely made a difference in the mind of Colonel Marcy. But regardless of the power of the Dragoon, the 1851 became a much more popular firearm, primarily because of its carryability. Over the production of the 1851 Navy, there were 4 different variations, and I'm back here to my 3rd generation reproduction that we're going to test today. But the first variation would have had the screw for the barrel wedge right underneath the barrel wedge itself. So it would be a screw on the bottom and a square back trigger guard. Second variation would have the screw on top and the square back trigger guard. So this one would be a pretty faithful reproduction of that second variation. It's the same on the 2nd generation that I have, as well as this 3rd generation. And then you move on to the 3rd variation of the 51. We had the screw in the same place, but we had a small oval trigger guard. Very difficult to get your finger in there, particularly if you had a gloved finger. So that gave way eventually to a larger oval trigger guard, and that became the 4th variation. So with this little bit of history and a little bit of the evolution of the Colt firearm to get up to the 1851 Navy, let's head back out to the range and run this test. So we're just going to see what the power of this 51 is, and I'm going to go back to the old data and see compare it to the 1860 Army, and just kind of see what the differences were between the two. I really like the 1851 Navy for the balance and just the feel of the thing. It's just a good feeling gun, and it's just one of these guns that just feels natural to shoot. So I'm really anxious to see what kind of power we get out of this. We're going to use 3F Swiss, and I'm going to shoot 3 different kinds of rounds. So I've got a round ball here that is about 85 grains. It's 380. I've got a conical here that's a Colt Cartridge Works reproduction. And so from Ear Is Gone bullet molds. And what they've done at Ear Is Gone is they found actual bullets on the battlefield, Civil War battlefields, that have been dug up, and have copied those with their molds. And so this is a perfect reproduction of the Colt Cartridge Works conical bullet from that period. So I'm excited to see what that'll do. And then also loaded up some paper cartridge as well, and with the Colt Cartridge Works bullet in it. I'll see if I can get that set so you can see it a little bit better. And I've got about 20 grains in there. And you've got to leave room for the paper that gets compressed, but you also have to leave room for the conical bullet. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to set that down before it blows away on us here today. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to load this thing up as much powder as I can get in it for the round ball, as much powder as I can get in it for the conical, and really try to replicate what you would do if you were actually, your life depended on how this gun performed. So it's not a target shooting load. It's not going to be a load that we're going to go out and hit all 10s with necessarily. It may be very accurate, we'll see. But the idea here is not to put in 15 grains and then cornmeal and then put a bullet on top of that, and you want to get it to the right mixture so that you've downloaded enough and be super accurate. Nobody was going to take a gun into a battle with a lower than you could possibly have velocity. You're going to make as much power, put much power as you can through this thing when your life depends on it. So that's what we're going to try to do, is replicate what you would do if you were indeed in a situation where this gun was the thing that could save your life. So let's take a look at it, and I'm guessing about 30 grains of this 3F Swiss in the round ball, probably about 25 with the conical. We'll shoot that, then we'll go to the paper cartridge and see what the paper cartridge does as well. Well, 30 grains was a little ambitious. I'm starting with the round ball. I can get 30 grains in the chamber of 3F Swiss without any problem, but I never have room for the ball, and I couldn't compress it to the point where it would need to clear the barrel as it rotates around, because it'll just jam up the gun. So I went back to 25 grains. That leaves me enough space to put in this ball, which is 380, like I said earlier. And they are cast, and so I'm trying to get the sprue that piece that's left behind when it dumps out of the mold. Trying to get that sprue straight up as close as possible. You'd think that would be simple, but it seems to want to fall every way but that way. And then I get a really good compression on this. And the other thing that I'm pleased with these 380 balls is I get a ring of, so I get this ring of lead that shows me that I've got a really good fit with that bullet. So that chamber is shaving off lead all the way around that bullet, giving me a ring of lead, let me know that I've got a good solid hold in that chamber without letting any of the fire from if I fire one round, another one shouldn't go off when you have that tight of a fit. There's no place for the fire to get into the powder charge from the neighboring chamber. So that's a very good indicator. And 25 grains of Swiss. So this is number 6. So I'm just putting some lube over the ends of these chambers so that my bullet has some lubrication to it. It's funny that Colt never recommended this. If you look at the Colt instructions on how to load one of his revolvers, he does not talk about putting lube over the end. And I just wonder if in the mind of Colt, when you fired your 6 shots, you're going to be done anyway, and they weren't necessarily going to be really reloading and shooting again unless it was practice like this. So lube would become unnecessary with, or at least not required, with just 6 shots and you're done. So I guess if you're in a combat situation or protecting yourself, obviously you're not going to be able to load the gun like this. But he never called for lube, and people figured out pretty quick that you needed to lube the bullet. So it's something that came from use and not necessarily from the manufacturer. So I got 25 grains of 3F Swiss by volume, obviously, in these chambers. I just got to cap them, and then we're going to see what we get for some energy here. I'm going to move my black powder off of this table. That would make a lot of sense, and just in case you were wondering, and make this thing safe, and then we'll pop a few rounds off. All right, we're all loaded up, 25 grains of 3F Swiss. We've got the ball in, we've got the lube on, and we've got percussion caps on the back. We're ready to go. Let's see what kind of velocity we're going to get out of this thing. I get 1065. That's moving pretty good. $10.49. Oh, my loading lever came down. $10.19. That is a new problem. I got some pretty hefty loads going though. And 1050, 1001. That puts me at 1012. All right, so we're gonna reload with some Conicals and give that a try and go from there. All right, well, I kind of got ahead of myself here. I'm ready. I got the hammerback ready to shoot. So we're going to throw these Conicals downrange and see what kind of a difference this makes. What does it say? 447. That's pretty wimpy. Well, that's all right. That all of a sudden all the way up to 736. 640. $6.99. I'm looking at $6.57. And $6.39, that's my 6 rounds. Got a cap on there, but no cap jam. So that was a 126 grain conical bullet from, originally would have been through Colt Cartridge Works. I didn't show the loading of the conical because this thing is loading extremely hard. It is really hard to load. It comes out of the mold at 380, just like the round ball. But with the surface area, I don't know what it is, but it loads extremely hard. And actually had to shave off a couple just for the cylinder to go around. I couldn't get them all the way in there. Cleaned out the cylinder. Finally got them loaded, but it was like it wasn't going to happen. And it's just the difference in this chamber. The last gun that I've used was a Uberti reproduction. It wasn't a black powder Colt, either second or third generation. This is third generation. There must be a difference, and I never even thought of it till I got out here at the range and tried to load these conicals, because I've done it with the 51 I had that was a Uberti, no problem at all. Loaded just fine. I had to drop the powder down in this particular chambered pistol. I had to drop the powder down to about 17 grains in order to even get the conical in there. And it wasn't like the conical was always hanging up because I had too much powder. I just had a heck of a time getting the conical in there at all. I could have had an empty chamber and had a heck of a time getting the conical in there. So these chambers are tight. They're much tighter than that Uberti, which was perfect. And this one, holy cow, I didn't think I was going to get it. So that's going to wipe out our chances of doing the paper cartridge, because I had to drop this to about 17 grains, like I said. Then I had to get the conical on top of that, which was a challenge. My paper cartridges have 20 grains in them, so that's not going to go in this chamber. It'll go in the Uberti. That's what I loaded them for originally. Those paper cartridges aren't going to go in this chamber, and then with this bullet on top, I'm not going to get that bullet in there with paper glued to it. It just isn't going to happen. I'm not even going to try, because I know I can't get 20 grains in here without the paper. So that kind of ruins the paper cartridge part. When I could shoot 25 grains with a round ball, about an 85 grain round ball, in the velocities I was getting at 1,000 feet per second. Now I've got this conical, which is said to be able to penetrate deeper by its shape, if you were putting down a wounded animal or something like that. But when you have to drop the powder charge clear down to 17 grains in order to get that conical bullet in this chamber, in this particular model of gun, you're losing your energy like crazy. I don't know, if I was in the United States Cavalry, I'd be shooting round ball for the energy of it. The other thing is, with this third generation Colt, I've never had a problem with my loading lever fall down on a 51 Navy. So another weird thing about this particular gun. And this, you know, it's a quality gun, but it's got some idiosyncrasies that kind of drive you a little bit nuts. So let's do a quick rundown of the data here that you've been seeing on the screen and make it a little bit bigger. But the round ball, we're looking at an 85 grain projectile going in an average of 1,033 feet per second. Run it through our formula. We've got 201 foot-pounds of energy out of that round ball, which puts it right in the neighborhood with a good old-fashioned 38 special. But then we go down to the conical, and you would have noticed on the table I did eliminate one of those velocities. It was so far out of whack that I think it was a bullet seating problem and not really typical of what the gun was doing. So I eliminated that one and made an average out of the 5 that were more consistent. But with the heavier bullet, even in that low velocity, we're looking at 127 feet per second, which is half of what the 38 special would do. So again, we're looking at significantly more energy with that round ball. When I go back and pull up the old 1860 Army data, it's quite surprising. Now that I look at it 2 years later, we're looking at a conical that outperformed the round ball, so just the absolute opposite of what we saw with the 51 Navy. But we also see a round ball that's just barely better with the 1860 Army than it was with the 1851 Navy. I know that the powder was different and the conditions were different and a lot of things you can't compare straight across. But looking at these numbers has got me very intrigued and giving me the idea for another video. I'm disappointed, honestly, with the performance of a third generation Colt. I have a second generation Colt that I wasn't going to shoot. Now I might shoot it just to see if it performs any better than the third generation Colt. But hey, if you liked the video, hit that thumbs up button. If you really like the video, hit that subscribe button as well. Let you know when the next video is coming out. Would really appreciate that. And again, for this episode and this video, I just want to thank you for coming. You can't sit on my lap. I'm sorry. You're not a very manly dog, you know. Yeah. So I didn't want you don't want a ball sticking out, obviously. We've got some numbers here that what am I doing?